Hello, we ghosties! Exclamation point. I'm Chance Lee.
And I'm Amanda McAvoy.
And this is That's So Gothic! Exclamation point. A movie podcast about girls, guys, and haunted houses! Exclamation point. Today, we are talking about the most uncomfortable, maybe movie ever made! Exclamation point. It's Darren Aronofsky's Mother! Exclamation point. All right, we ghosties. To help us break down this movie, we have invited our friend Caitlin Stacy on the podcast.
Hi, I'm Caitlin.
Caitlin is not the Caitlin Stacy from Smile, but maybe we'll pretend she is so we can get more people to listen, because you might think that that's who this is. But it's not. But you're probably in for a better time, frankly. So she is.
Plot twist, I'm alive.
She's alive. But she's one of the only other people I know who has seen this movie. So we'll get your opinions on it shortly. But first, we'll do our background. So released in 2017, Mother! Exclamation point, is directed by Darren Aronofsky, who also wrote the screenplay. None of the characters in the movie have real names. So Jennifer Lawrence is Mother, no exclamation point. Javier Bardem is him with a capital H, him. Michelle Pfeiffer is woman. Ed Harris is man. Brian and Donald Gleason are their children. And there is a batshit insane cameo by Kristen Wiig.
I had no idea she was in this.
Yeah.
I told my brother has never seen this movie, and I said, do you mind if I spoil something for you, Mark? And I told him Kristen Wiig is in this, and he said his response was, oh, she's hot. Which I was not expecting about Kristen Wiig, but
not wrong, but also not generally the first.
Yeah. Also, but she is very hot in this movie. I feel like
she really is. I mean, straight up, I went to go see this with my dad, and I went because Jennifer Lawrence was hot, and I was like, I can't tell him that.
Oh my god, she's so hot. I was like a Jennifer Lawrence fan in high school, and then I kind of grew out of it. And then watching this movie, I was like, oh my god, she is so hot. She looks so good in this movie.
She really does. Oh, phenomenal.
10 out of 10.
Well, this is the story of Jennifer Lawrence just constantly asking people to get out of her house, and no one will listen to her. That's the plot of this movie. So it has a 61% critical tomato and a 51% audience tomato, which is honestly higher than I was expecting. This was the 19th movie to get a F from CinemaScore, the audience review when people walk out of the movie.
Wow.
So that's why I went to see it, honestly. I was like, I've got to see what this movie is that's pissing everybody off.
Yeah.
It cost $30 million. It made only 17 domestic and 44 worldwide.
Wow.
Brian Tallarico for RogerEbert.com gave it 3.5 stars. And he says that Mother is one of the most audacious and flat out bizarre movies that a major studio has released in years. It is at times horrifying, at times riveting, at times baffling, and at times like nothing you've ever seen before.
That feels right. Yeah, that
I agree with
you could spin that in a positive or a negative way. So that absolutely feels right.
100%.
Yeah. He also says that Darren Aronofsky uses this freedom of not playing by the rules to examine gender roles and the differences between artistic creation and literal creation. So that'll be a theme we can think about. There's, as I said, it's got a 61% critical tomato. So there are just as many negative reviews. And this is one I found interesting. Jeffrey Edelatpour for KQED Radio. So to preface this, Darren Aronofsky says this movie is about climate change and our destruction of the planet. Mm-hmm. We can talk about that later. I don't agree with that at all.
No.
But this writer says that the destruction of the planet is an obvious cause for concern, but so too is another movie with violent imagery directed at women, beautifully photographed, once again written by a man.
Ooh. I
So
like that take. That is
Yeah.
something, yeah.
Definitely something for us to think about. And then the last review I will cite before I get you guys' opinion is Zach Sharf for IndieWire. And he says that this movie is hilarious. This is a man that, like, ladies, if you do not be in a room alone with Zach Sharf. Just
Yeah, no, that is
just-
one giant red flag. That's
Yeah.
like seeing Edward from Twilight in the room and you're like, ooh, you sparkly. That's a big red flag.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, no.
Yeah,
The
this
name
is,
alone is already making me uncomfortable.
I guess both him and A.O. Scott of the New York Times thought this movie was hilarious. I couldn't read the New York Times review because it's behind a paywall, but
Rude.
this IndieWire review quoted it as saying, "Don't listen to anyone who natters on about how intense or disturbing it is. It's a hoot."
Oh,
No.
I don't know that I laughed at one single part.
I think I
I
laughed
did-
in horror.
I
Yeah.
did some uncomfortable laughing a couple of times in the movie that I'll point out, but like, I mean, especially the last act of this movie is absolutely repellent.
Yeah.
And the thing that Zach Sharf says, he has this line that stood out to me. He's talking about the humor in Aronofsky's madness, and he says, quote, "Nobody in their right mind would treat anyone the way these people treat Lawrence," end quote. And like, I mean, I haven't had like genocide break out in my house, but
Right.
like yet.
That's good
But like,
to know.
but like, I have been treated this way by people.
Yes.
And
Yeah,
I think
absolutely.
that's right.
I would like to see that writer try to close up a library and tell people to leave at the end of the night.
Yeah,
Because
legit.
That is exactly what it feels like. That is
Yeah, it is.
exactly. Like, I was so uncomfortable watching this movie because that is what it feels like. Like, hi, you
Mhm.
only have 1 minute to leave. You have to go. And all of their papers are still over the table. And they're like, I'll be ready. And you're like, no, you won't. I know it.
Yep.
So that's a blatant lie that no one would treat them like that.
This man has lived a very lucky / privileged life to
Yeah.
to have this point of view, I think.
Absolutely.
Mhm.
And so that led me down this path of tragedy versus comedy and the definition of the sense. And a writer named Allison Wilkinson for Vox.com wrote about the exclamation point that Aronofsky insists we mention in the title, and how that makes you think of something more as a comedy because it has an exclamation point at the end. But she talks about the classical definition of a comedy doesn't necessarily mean something with jokes or even something that's funny. There are two opposites, comedy and tragedy. And a tragedy begins with everything good and ends with it having gone to hell, whereas a comedy is more of a loop where most people kind of end up back in the same place where they started, maybe better than they were originally, but you kind of circle back around. And so she thinks that the cyclical nature of this movie makes it a comedy in the kind of like Dante's divine comedy
Mhm.
sense.
Oh. I was thinking more of like a black comedy, kind of like Patrick Melrose. I don't know if any of you have seen that, but that is like, it's marketed as like a dark comedy. And in the beginning it is, you're like, oh, this is kind of sardonic humor. But then you get through it and you're like, I'm uncomfortably laughing and I don't know if I should be laughing anymore. But kind of what that reminded me of. Honestly. Yeah. But I wasn't laughing for this at all. So, but it's an interesting point. Like, because
Yeah.
I mean, obviously we'll get more into it, but I mean, the like starting at the beginning and then cycling all the way back through to the beginning. Yeah, that's, I didn't
Right.
think about
Yeah.
that.
Yeah, I don't know if I agree, but these are things to think about as we get into the clusterfuck that is this film.
Yeah.
But first, we'll do our cast and director roundup. So, Darren Aronofsky, director of Requiem for a Dream,
Mhm.
what to me was the #1 horror movie I'd seen until this movie. That movie, it's absolutely horrifying.
It really is. Is that the one with the emaciated like mother?
Poor Ellen Burstyn and her diet pills.
Yes. Okay.
And
All right. Yeah.
the fridge is literally coming after her.
Right. Okay, yeah, that movie is horrifying. I haven't seen it in a long time.
It's rough. And he did Black Swan.
Yeah.
And then he ended up in this biblical phase where he did Noah with Russell Crowe and Hermione and Jennifer Connelly. And it was just Noah. It was just a biblical movie. And there was no weird Aronofsky shit behind it. It was just Noah. And then he turns around and pulls this like Old Testament shit out with Mother, which I did not know I was getting into with this. And now he's doing the Brendan Fraser is 600 pounds movie, The Whale.
Yeah.
Which don't know how I feel about that.
I have feelings on that, but yeah. So how do you feel about Aronofsky as a filmmaker?
I think he's a hack, but like a really talented hack.
Tell us how you really feel.
Yeah.
I think this movie is an absolute masterpiece. I don't know if I agree with what it's doing, or even if he knows what it's doing, but it's just so well made and so balls to the wall, fucking gutsy that like I can't help but admire it. And I hadn't felt this way about his work since Requiem for a Dream. I found Black Swan left me cold, and I didn't see The Wrestler with Mickey Rourke or a lot of his in-between movies. And Noah was an absolute shit show. That was a disaster.
I never saw it.
And so this I thought was great. He's good at being relentless.
That's a good way to put it. I wish that someone else had written this movie and he just directed it. Like, I wish that, because I saw a lot of reviews and criticisms of it, that it was very heavy-handed with the allegory. But again, that's something we'll touch on more later. But yeah, it's a beautiful movie. Good job.
I mean, kind of like Black Swan, because the only other one I've seen by him is Black Swan, and they honestly read very similar to me. I mean, I feel like they're both, like, obviously we all know like Swan Lake, like, we've seen that probably when we were children and forced to go with our school. But like it honestly plays out kind of the same as like a psychological horror that I think I did not understand when I saw it. I went because Natalie Portman was in it. This is a trend here, if you can't tell.
He just keeps casting hot women.
I know, and I'm a sucker. So.
It's true. Jennifer Connelly's in Requiem for a Dream. She's like peak hotness in that.
Yeah, great eyebrows.
I haven't seen that, and I need to, because I've heard it's a really good movie, but I've just yet to see it.
I saw that in the theater, Requiem for a Dream, and I remember leaving the theater and it was packed, like completely full. I went to see it somewhere in New York because I was visiting my cousin, and I'm from Mississippi. They did not show Requiem for a Dream at a theater in Mississippi. So we were leaving the theater and people were just like, what the fuck was that? It has the most relentless ending.
Yeah.
Until this movie. So I saw Mother in the theater completely alone, not a single person in the theater but me. And I think it was the second week of release. It was the second week of release, so that bad word of mouth had already scared people away. I went to the Cinemagic and I bought my ticket, and the guy goes, okay, pick your seat. And there was one seat that was illuminated on the screen. And I said to the guy, I said, how weird would it be if I sat next to the only other person in the theater? And he said, that's you. it just highlights that seat. You're the only one in the theater. And I said, okay, please don't let anybody else sit next to me should someone else show up. And no one came in. I was in the theater by myself. It was one of the greatest movie-going experiences I've ever had, because I didn't have to deal with people talking. I didn't have to deal with people. Caitlin, how did the audience react when you saw it?
Well, so I was in a little tiny movie theater in the middle of nowhere, West Virginia. So you can only imagine. Yes. And I took my dad with me, who at the time I think was like, oh my God, when did this come out? 2017. So like, oh God, it was only a couple of years ago. And there wasn't that many people in the theater. We also went to go see it like about 2 to 3 weeks after release. And we were just sitting there, and my dad just looked at me and said, what the fuck is going on? And I'm like, I don't know. And he's like, you're the literature major. You should know this. And everybody else in the theater were just very confused. I just heard people whispering a lot. And then by the last bit, everybody went, oh my God. Like this one woman was just like, oh my God, I've never seen anything like this. Why is this on television? And I'm like, lady, this is on the big screen, but okay.
Oh my God.
And a couple of people walked out. Because
Wow. Yeah, I
it was
went and
ambitious.
sat in my car and shook for a bit afterwards before I could drive home.
I felt like I watched a fever dream, and my dad was grumbling about how it was like the worst horror movie he'd ever seen in his life. But my dad is also not a very in-depth person, so I think I love my father. I love my father very much. But he's like surface level with horror. He's like, meh, it's not Stephen King. I'm Dylan.
Yeah.
So
That's
yeah,
funny.
it was a very interesting.
I kind of wish I saw it in theaters.
Yeah, the people leaving the theater, I think, is what was wild, because at that point people were like, like we're done, and like got up and left. So I don't know.
So we'll talk about the cast too. Jennifer Lawrence, hot. So this is when I think the Hunger Games had wrapped up, and she started doing a couple harder R-rated fare movies like this and Red Sparrow. Did you see Red Sparrow?
No. Yes, I also saw that with my dad. Can't say
Oh my
how awkward
goodness,
that was.
Oh, you sent me to horror school. I just love that movie. I fucking loved that movie. I think Red Sparrow is phenomenal.
It was great. It was really great. My dad was so awkward sitting there with me because he was like, I don't know if I should be sitting here with my daughter in this movie right now.
It has, I mean, it's, again, for like a movie that was released by a major studio, it has some really uncomfortable scenes in it. So yeah, she was really pushing it. That movie's very good, and I highly recommend it. It didn't get the credit it deserved, I don't think. And then she kind of disappeared for a bit. She got married, she had a baby. She came back with that terrible Don't Look Up movie on Netflix. But so at the time she was dating Aronofsky. I always wonder if this type of thing is just for publicity or not, because they conveniently broke up right after the movie. Is this kind of drumming up enthusiasm for it? But she talked about breaking up with him, he's the same age as Javier Bardem, like exactly. That's
a little
really. Yeah. So there's those parallels to think about. And she says, I'll have to figure out where I got this quote from, but she said that when she does a movie, she likes to go on tour, talk about it, and then like go watch Real Housewives or something. She doesn't want to live in that world, but all he wanted to do was talk about it. And she says, I get it. It's his baby. He wrote it. He conceived it. He directed it. And I was doing double duty, trying to be a supportive partner while also being like, can we please, for the love of God, not talk about Mother for 1 second? So that drove them apart. I don't know.
Isn't Aronofsky white?
Yes.
Okay, because I was going to say typical white boy behavior.
Yes. 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 Yeah, and that seems to track with just what I think about him. Javier Bardem, thoughts?
I don't know how much I've seen Javier Bardem in. Like, I can't think of another movie that I've seen with him. He's like one of those actors that I feel like I know really well, but then when I think about it, I'm like, what have I actually seen him in? But he was great in it. I mean, I think he's pretty hot. Like, I get Jennifer Lawrence's I get Mother's character arc of just loving him. I get it. Like, yeah, I mean, he was great in it. Oh, I forgot he was obviously in No Country for Old Men. I have seen that. He was great in that.
He has that bowl cut.
Yeah, yeah, he does.
He has that terrible haircut. Yeah, and he's my favorite James Bond villain in Skyfall.
Oh, that's right.
I still need to see that.
Yeah.
And then he's in that terrible Ricky Ricardo, Nicole Kidman, Lucy movie. That movie is so bad.
Oh, was he in
Woof.
Dune? Oh. Was
Is he what?
Is he in Dune?
That's what it says. But
Oh. I didn't know that.
That's a long movie that I barely remember.
That's fair.
So we also have Michelle Pfeiffer and Ed Harris. Ed Harris, I won't go, this is not a Milk Money podcast, but you guys, I think, both know my love for the movie Milk Money. And
yes.
Ed Harris will always be peak daddy because of Milk Money. But other than that, I have no other thoughts on him. And then Michelle Pfeiffer is an absolute fucking queen and
so good.
Walks away with every scene she's in this movie. The one part of this uncomfortable movie that brings me joy is when Michelle Pfeiffer comes in with her lemonade that turns out to be half vodka.
Yes.
Just clinks those glasses together and is like, whoops. Like, I want to live that life.
When she walked into that room, I said, I know that this is going to be an uncomfortable movie because she's passing this off as lemonade, and that is crystal clear. There is not a hint of yellow in that cup. And she's like, woo, lemonade! And I'm like, something's off. Something's wrong.
Like, girl, that's not Crystal Light. Like, we all know.
Oh, she's so good.
She was phenomenal. I swear, every movie I've ever seen her in, she is just on fire. She just eats up everything. And can we talk about her in like the freaking stockings and lingerie for like 2 seconds? Because like,
please,
can I please have that vibe when I'm in my 50s?
I think it was like this year, like 2017 was when, remember there was 2 really popular songs that came out that name dropped Michelle Pfeiffer.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, I think that this was around that time, which would make sense because she's like hot in this movie. So
she's
she
just a
earned
queen.
It.
Like, just like Chance said, 100% queen every movie she's in.
Come for Jennifer Lawrence, stay for Michelle Pfeiffer.
Yes, I agree.
Yes.
And she'll always be Catwoman to me. You know, I love Batman Returns, and she elevates that. Every time I watch it, I just get more and more into her performance for that, which is just incredible. And then last but not least, we have to talk about our cinematographer, who is Matthew Libatique. He has frequently worked with Aronofsky, and he also shot 2 of the best English language Western cinema films, Venom and Josie and the Pussycats.
Stop.
Yes. Wow.
Door lover.
Michelle. Yes.
We have the vinyl in this house. Like,
oh my God.
Oh, I'm jealous.
Wow. Yes, I had no idea I had a favorite cinematographer until right now.
Michelle Pfeiffer is my queen and Matthew Libatique is my king.
Wow.
And I will say the scene in Josie and the Pussycats where Alan Cumming almost runs over them and they're in the headlights and he holds up the album. That is a gorgeous shot.
That is amazing.
We would not have Mother were it not for Josie and the Pussycats. Like, just keep that in mind.
I'm here for it.
Yeah. And so I watched behind the scenes on the Blu-ray, and he talks about how there are only 3 shots in this movie where you're either over Jennifer Lawrence's shoulder, you're close up on her, or you're her POV. And that's pretty much it. Those are the 3 shots they use over the entire film. And that's why it creates that claustrophobic feeling. Because you are her. It makes you her in the course of the movie. And they show how they shot some scenes, and like some of the cameramen, there's one scene and one of the cameramen literally has like this thing on that has a handle on him, and there's another guy dragging this guy because the cameraman's going backwards, and so there's another guy going forward so he can see where they're going and like dragging this poor man through the hall while he films Jennifer Lawrence coming at him. Just the technical stuff is wild for this movie.
Yeah.
So we'll take a short break and then we'll come back with our plot summary. So buckle up, we ghosties! ! All right, we ghosties, we're back with our plot summary of Mother! Exclamation point. So I watched this on Blu-ray, which I own, and I swear I've watched it before, but the audio track would not play. So I had to watch it with audio narration for the visually impaired. Have you ever watched anything like this before?
No, I can't say.
No.
So when there's no dialogue, a deep voiced man narrates what is happening on the screen.
Right.
And he's surprisingly poetic and really enriched this experience for me.
Really?
Because the things that he drew my attention to are things that I'm, as a sighted person, might not necessarily have actually been looking at.
Huh.
So I will quote him extensively throughout this plot summary. Because I again, this is an absolutely fascinating way to watch this movie. I had only ever done this once. I accidentally turned it on during an episode of The Simpsons in which Moe's bar towel starts talking. And whenever the towel wasn't talking, this man would just be like, and then the towel falls to the floor, and he just explains what's happening. And it just enhanced the like surrealness of it. It does the same with this movie, and it makes me. There are some lines that I really wonder who writes the script for the narrator for the visually impaired, because some of the lines are great.
I kind of hope it's like all one job. Like you come to set, it's this deep voiced man, and he's just taking his little notes. I'm hoping it's one.
He has a great eye for detail. So we open with a woman who's on fire. She stares directly at us and closes her eyes and sheds a tear. And then we see Javier Bardem. Also, since the characters don't have real names, I'm not going to be calling Jennifer Lawrence Mother. I'm just going to call her Jennifer Lawrence. I'm going to call him Javier Bardem. I can't call them these silly names.
Fair.
So he puts a gem on a pedestal, and then this burned house restores itself. And then the narrator says, the shape of a woman rises from a desiccated lump under the covers of the bed. We see her pretty oval-shaped face and flawless skin.
Ooh. Ooh.
Great description of Jennifer Lawrence.
Honestly.
Straight up.
But the
I heard
fact
that,
that
I'd be like, oh, Jennifer Lawrence, yeah.
Yeah.
like, yes, exactly. And so her first line is, baby.
Baby.
And the narrator will describe her a couple times. Her freckled China doll face and curvaceous young woman in a sheer nightgown. So she is in her sheer nightgown and she's looking for her husband. And he is we meet him. He's a writer. He has writer's block. She is trying to encourage him through this writer's block. Meanwhile, she's restoring this gorgeous, gigantic farm home that they live in the middle of a field. And she, as the narrator says, can sense a blurry organic shape throbbing within the wall.
Oh,
sometimes she'll put her hand to the wall and the camera will like zoom in into the wall, and it's like the house itself has a heartbeat. So that's our setup. That night they hear a knock at the door, and it's Ed Harris. He is an orthopedic surgeon, and he acts really weird around Jennifer Lawrence and really familiar with the husband, who just brings him right, come on into the house. She starts to have a panic attack while making tea. And the men, meanwhile, are drinking whiskey. Husband speaks for her. She's not much of a drinker, he says.
Yeah.
She says, I drink. And then he tries to give her some, and she says, no, thanks. It's all very awkward.
Yeah.
The man says he mistook their house for a B&B. And Javier Bardem says, oh, we always talk about how this house is too big for the two of us. And we start to get there'll be some tension between them and not having kids that will start to percolate. So the husband invites him to stay overnight. And she says, this isn't a good idea. We don't know this man. He's a stranger. And he tries to make her feel bad for not wanting him there. So This will be a increasing sense of tension throughout this movie, as he will just let people into the house and not listen to her.
Yeah. Come on in.
So I will say this is a part, there are a few parts where I did laugh at the kind of dark comedy of it in this first part, because he lights up a cigarette and she says, "We don't smoke." And he says, "Oh yeah, good choice." And she says, in the house.
Like specifically.
Like, and he just flicks it right out the window, like onto their porch. Like,
And she just looks so affronted. She's like, "Excuse me? Like,
Yeah.
I can't believe you did that."
oh my God.
And he's
So
just like,
no one cares. No one cares. And she sets up the guest room for them. And the man learns that the husband is this famous poet whom he admires. He is eyeballing that crystal that we saw in the opening, but the husband does not let him touch it.
Nope.
And he says, "When I was younger, I lost everything in a fire, and I didn't know if I could create again until I found this in the ashes." So there's we don't know what's going on yet, especially on first. What did you think, Amanda, going on your first viewing of this movie?
I honestly, it's hard to say because I didn't know anything about this movie going in, except it had a very disturbing ending. And that's why I put off, like, I knew, kind of jumping ahead a little bit, that there was like some infant pregnancy stuff, and that is like peak horror for me. So that's why I didn't watch it. But with that said, like, I didn't know anything about this movie. So I genuinely had no idea. Like, I didn't know what the crystal was. I didn't give it too much thought. Like, I think just because this movie, even though it's like a slow burn, it's like very fast paced. So I feel like I didn't have time to really think about, like, what does that crystal mean? Like, what the hell is Ed Harris actually doing there? Like, like everything just happened. And it seems so like natural to like Javier Bardem that like as a viewer for the first time, I was just kind of like going along with it. So I didn't have like really opinions at this point, because I was just like, what the fuck is happening?
Yeah, I think that's fair. You definitely get dragged along with her throughout this movie. And yeah, I sometimes I think a lot about movies where it almost tells you the end at the beginning, but I have such a poor memory. Like, I'm not going to remember 5 minutes later. I'm not going to remember that we saw this house literally get rebirthed from ashes. Like,
yes,
I don't even remember that's happening when you're like 30 minutes into the movie.
Right. And actually, I will say the one thing that I was like so sure of, and I was obviously incorrect, was I was like, the house is going to burn down because of Ed Harris's smoking. Actually, like I was like,
yes.
Oh, he's going to burn the house down.
Check off cigarette. Yes.
He's got a cigarette. And then that doesn't happen. But that was the one thing that I like picked up.
To your credit, she burns the house down with his lighter.
So there is something there. They didn't throw that for no reason. So
yeah. This is a movie that like you need to know as little about it going into it.
Yeah.
Normally I don't care about spoilers, like, because it's like, oh, the journey, but just the wild ride that this movie takes you on is unlike anything I've ever been on before.
Absolutely.
So back to the movie. Ed Harris will cough a lot. He's just constantly coughing, which is a place I am in right now with my permanent chest cold. So I sympathize. And Jennifer Lawrence gets up in the middle of the night, and the narrator lets us know that she puts on a full-length cable knit cardigan.
Ooh.
So she sees his cigarettes in the ashtray, because of course he's fucking smoking in his room. And he's mostly naked, all naked, I couldn't quite tell. And he's puking in the toilet, and the husband is there helping him, but he has this gaping wound near his rib.
Yeah.
So
I just got it.
Yeah, doesn't it make so much more sense? You go, oh my God, like
that's hilarious. God.
The second, you're gonna have a lot of light bulb moments, I think, from us two-time watchers.
I think
here.
so, yeah. Yeah.
This is my like second and a half time watching this movie. I watched the first half because I find the first half uncomfortable in an enjoyable way.
I
And
love
then
the half.
post-pregnancy is too stressful for me to deal with. So I usually turn it off around the time we'll get there. We'll get there.
Yeah.
So there'll be a couple times where she does these little petty things that I really appreciate. So she knocks his lighter off the table, like behind the table into a little crack.
Yep.
Mhm.
So she has another panic attack though, unfortunately. And she drinks this like magic yellow powder to calm
Mhm.
herself. And this is something that I am curious what you guys think about it.
Well, that was actually one of the questions I was going to ask you too. So I don't know, but if Caitlin, if you have an idea or anything, please go ahead.
No, I was trying to find anything on this yellow substance because I'm still trying to figure out what that is. Because obviously, like we know, like this movie is one massive allegory, and she's obviously Mother Earth, and we're trying to figure out what this is that's making her feel better. But I cannot for the life of me figure out what it is. My brain, my like stupid Dayquil brain goes turmeric, and I'm like, that's not right.
It's just turmeric.
But honestly,
that's
it's
the
like
secret.
because every time she has those panic attacks, all of a sudden, you hear like the thing about this, I think that jars me the most is the absence of music.
Yeah.
So it's the only time you really hear something, and it's very jarring to your ears because it sounds like a pressure. And I'm not really sure what this is that's releasing the pressure. I'm still trying to figure that out.
Yeah.
Yeah, one of the reasons why I have 9 pages of notes on this movie is because Aronofsky, as Jennifer Lawrence said, can't shut the fuck up about it. So
That's what the pressure is.
He talked at length to every media outlet you can think of about this movie. And the one thing he would not talk about is the liquid. And people would ask him about it point blank. And in an article from IndieWire, he said, "I will never answer what Jen is drinking. That secret I will take to the grave."
Wow. What a dick.
So, right, I know.
If it's not
and
on
I'm
his
like,
gravestone, I'm gonna be pissed.
Yeah.
I'm like, is this just here to piss us off? Like, that's where I go. This has no meaning. It's here just to confound us. It's here just to manipulate us. And the only thing I could think of that made even a remote amount of sense is that I can't think of the exact name for them, but early benzos like Klonopin and Xanax were yellow.
Oh.
And there's a Rolling Stones song called Mother's Little Helper. It talks about her taking yellow pills.
Oh.
So, and the Mother's Little Helper were these yellow pills. So I'm like, maybe it's just a symbol of anti-anxiety medication. But then going back to what Caitlin said, how does that tie into any of like they didn't have like Adam and Eve didn't have Xanax, like to be honest, I don't know if people had anxiety pre 1940 or something. I feel like we all have it now, but I think people used to be too overworked and tired to be anxious. And so they clearly didn't have medication. So what, I do not know.
Well, and
so oh, sorry, go ahead.
No, you go ahead, Caitlin.
Okay. So one of the things that I had found in it was like a big discussion thread was that that the yellow stuff may have been an allusion to the short story The Yellow Wallpaper. Have you guys ever heard of that?
Oh, yeah. I heard that.
Mm-hmm.
So for anybody that doesn't know, it's like a short story about a woman who gradually goes insane and thinks there's things crawling in her wallpaper. And she was trying to recuperate from, they said, and I quote, a temporary nervous depression or a slight hysterical tendency. I don't know what we call that now, but
being a woman.
the struggles. So I thought that was kind of interesting. I'd have to look more into that though, and study it more to see if there's anything similar about it.
I mean, I guess that could tie in a little bit too, then the fact that she's, and we'll talk about this more with the house, but she's taking care of the house. She's the only one doing anything for the house. The only thing that I think really threw me off about the yellow is that it's not like, it's such a weird, because she pours it out when she finds out she's pregnant, I believe.
Mhm.
So
Mhm.
like, I just like, I guess I don't understand, like, if it was gonna be a metaphor for something, have it throughout the whole movie, like make it a bigger deal when she gets rid of it. Like, what is the difference? What is the change in like tone from when before and after she finds out? I don't know. It was very, I kind of think he was just being a dickhead with it.
I agree, because if we're supposed to buy
Yeah.
into this, her being a personification of Mother Earth,
Yeah.
like what could it possibly be?
The only other thing I could think of,
Sunshine, like
yeah, like, but like Stardust from the Big Bang, like, but then like, did that finally just dissipate after biblical times? Is that what he's saying? Like, fucking
Oh,
weird.
maybe. Because isn't that when
Yeah.
it shifts from like Old Testament to New Testament?
yes, because the
Oh,
Jesus thing, yeah.
Oh,
I
yeah.
was not
So
paying
like,
enough attention.
so like,
in
fuck the Big
CD.
Bang. We'll let them make their own show. That makes so much more sense. Okay.
So yeah, so she'll drink this occasionally throughout the movie. We don't know what it is. The next morning, there's an Ed Harris jump scare. He shows up behind her. He lights his cigarette on the gas burner, and ding dong, according to the narrator, it's an alluring middle-aged woman. It's Michelle Pfeiffer.
Ooh.
So she is his wife, and the narrator tells us the woman eyeballs the lady of the house.
Ooh.
So there's a kerfuffle in the kitchen, and then there's some talk about kids, which is a source of tension between Jennifer Lawrence and Javier Bardem. Michelle Pfeiffer and Ed Harris do have kids. And then the husband tells them they can just stay with them as long as they want.
Hang out.
Just hang out. And so Jennifer Lawrence says, why did you invite them to stay without asking me? And he says, I didn't think it was a big deal.
Oh.
Sorry, I have
Men.
to start doing some breathing during
Yeah.
this. I don't know.
Mhm.
I've got to go to therapy, particularly over this movie, because I don't know what this is triggering in me, but it's triggering something heavy. And so Jennifer Lawrence goes back upstairs. She's plastering this room with a plaster that's a yellow color too. Am I supposed to read into every yellow in this movie now? You know, I don't know. But
Okay.
this is when Michelle Pfeiffer comes up. My favorite scene in the whole movie, clinking that lemonade.
Mm-hmm.
It's half vodka. And she also asks for painkillers from Jennifer Lawrence.
You having a painkiller?
She's like, no,
No.
it's in your drink.
I just have weird yellow glitter water.
Oh, that's true. She does have that. Yeah. And Michelle Pfeiffer is always suspicious of her and everything she does. And yeah, Jennifer Lawrence finally takes a sip and goes, "Oh, it's strong." And Michelle Pfeiffer goes, "I'm on my second."
She's like, I was prepared.
She's great. And so Jennifer Lawrence is talking about her renovating the house and says, I want to make a paradise. So we're getting into this Garden of Eden type situation.
Mm-hmm.
The men go out for a hike and the women go to do laundry. And so I guess I did laugh a lot in this movie. They go down to the basement and Michelle Pfeiffer says, I guess you haven't quite gotten to this part yet.
All with the underwear?
with just her unfinished basement.
Oh,
like,
yes, that's
she's
right.
such a shady bitch about everything. Like, I guess you haven't done this yet.
Jennifer Lawrence just looking at her like, bitch.
Jennifer Lawrence is like, I need to find this woman an Airbnb. I can't.
Oh, shit.
So they decide to do their laundry together, and the narrator says the woman holds up a pair of granny panties.
I love this narrator. I feel like I missed out.
He's really saucy. Yeah, so Michelle Pfeiffer's like, "Oh, this is why you and your husband aren't getting along because you're wearing these big ass straws." And she has her like neon colored lacy underwear.
Yes.
And Jennifer Lawrence does another petty thing and tosses the panties behind the washer. We don't get a lot of her doing that. Like, she's very passive in this movie. So I like the times where she does these little these little things. But they're always like, I think she's supposed to be the symbol of virtue, you know? So we have like the vice of smoking, and she's like, nope, not in my house. And this like vice of like horniness, and she's like, no, not in my house. You know, she's like very pure. Because when we get to it, like the very odd sex scene, and when she does get pregnant, feels very like immaculate conception to me. Because like we don't actually see them do anything, you know, and she just wakes up and she's pregnant.
Yep.
So there's kind of like this Virgin Mary thing with her, I think. But so anyway, so she is cleaning up because Michelle Pfeiffer has left the entire house a mess.
Yeah.
The narrator says the young wife sees a strange organic mass in the toilet, and as she pokes it with a wooden handle, it squirts blood and shoots down the drain.
Yeah. What? I thought it was a rat. Was I incorrect?
It looks like a heart to me.
Yeah, that's what I thought it was. The second time around when I saw this, I was like, because the first time I went, what the fuck is that? And the second time I was like, oh, I was like, it's like an organ. And so, yeah, I definitely thought it was a heart the second time I looked at it. That was somehow like squirming around like a fish. Like, bleh.
No clue what it's supposed to be. So she also finds she goes through the man's bag and she finds a picture of her husband inside of it. And she sees Michelle Pfeiffer in the study, eyeballing that crystal again. So the men return from the walk, and the husband tells Jennifer Lawrence that Ed Harris has known who he was this whole time. And because she says, I found this picture of you in his bag. And he says to her, why were you going through his bag?
It's like, I don't know. You invited some randos to stay at our house. Of course I'm going to look through our stuff.
Right? It's the least I can do.
Legit.
The fact that it's not like he's not on her side. It's like he's not even aware there is a side to be on.
Right.
And that's what infuriates me the most, I think. So the Ed Harris and Michelle Pfeiffer go up into the study. They end up breaking that crystal, and he gets really mad and kicks them all out of the study. Jennifer Lawrence has another panic attack. And when she has them, she starts to envision the house as like charred or burned or falling apart. And so she has to drink her yellow medicine. And the husband closes the door and he knocks off the doorknob, which like falls down and puts a dent in the floorboard, which she's very upset about. Like that's the first thing. I like that's the first thing she notices. She picks up the doorknob, then she like feels the floor to see if it left a mark.
Oh, that's hard to get.
I know. And so he boards up the door, like he boards this place up, and she tries to kick them out. She goes, I'm kicking them out, but they of course will not listen to her. Then their two sons show up. They get into a huge argument about some sort of will. This quickly escalates into one of them beating the other one to death with that doorknob.
Yeah.
And so the husband carries the brother away and leaves her alone, inside the house. And she says, please don't leave me.
Yeah. One of my favorite scenes in this movie, because I think it's one of the most horrifying things I've ever seen, was when she's running after them, like, please don't leave me. And Jennifer Lawrence is a spectacular actress. Say whatever you want about her. She's so good. The emotion in her voice of just like, don't leave me. And then they walk out the door and she's like right behind them, but she gets to the door and everyone's just gone. And it's just like silence. All you hear is like cicadas. So good. It's like, I was blown away by that scene. It's absolutely wonderful. And it just like shows, again, we'll talk about it more with the house, but it shows how like isolated the house is. And then in turn you feel isolated because you're Jennifer Lawrence in that situation. Oh, it's so wonderful. But yeah, he leaves her alone.
And then there's she like,
oh, sorry, go ahead.
No, go ahead. You go, girl. You go.
There's two grown-ass people who could take their son to the hospital.
Legit. Well, and then, you see her like completely traumatized. Like you said, like that scene was phenomenal. Like I was scared with her. I was like, don't leave me alone. Like, I don't want to be alone here either.
Like, she also just watched a guy die. And like, that should be enough at least to stay home with her. But
Yeah, and then she's still covered in blood and trying to clean
Yes.
it. Like that was even worse. Was then you're hearing like the pails in the water, and you're like, ah,
It's so tense. I absolutely adored that like 10
so
minute
good,
movie. So good.
so good.
Yeah, and we don't know where the brother went, the murdering brother.
Oh yeah, he just went off.
He could be anywhere.
He's got to go.
So yeah, as Caitlin said, she's trying to clean the house now while she's by herself. She is scrubbing the floorboard, but she can't get it clean. She touches the wall, and we get that vision of the organ inside the wall again, but this time it's decaying. And she's filling I forget what she's doing. She's in the kitchen or filling a bucket, and the narrator says she sees a fly bumping against the window. It falls to the sill and dies.
Oh.
So he points that out. And
I need to watch it with this narrator. I'm loving this.
you really should.
Right?
So this blood stain in the floorboards, it's almost like acid or something. It's eating through the floorboards. It's really disgusting.
Yeah.
And she manages to like stick her whole hand through the floorboard, and blood drips onto this light bulb that's in the basement.
Yeah.
And she goes down into the basement and turns on the light, and the bulb explodes and blood goes everywhere.
It's so good.
And the narrator says that the blood stain highlights the mortar patch. So there's this patch of mortar on the wall, and she breaks that open, and there's a hidden room there, and a frog comes out of it. And upstairs, she finds the doors open, and the picture of her husband has been ripped, and the son is back. The murdering son. He takes dad's wallet and leaves. And so then the husband comes back and kind of comforts her. She covers the hole with a rug because she can't do anything about this hole. It cannot be patched. And her husband just goes upstairs and falls asleep.
She's tired. He's a big day.
It's been a long day dealing with murders,
Oh my. So she hears some noises, and the family has come back, and they brought guests with them.
Of course.
And then all of a sudden the husband wakes up, and he says, "Oh yes, I invited them to have their wake here at our house."
Oh my God.
This to me, I don't know what this stretch of the movie is, 5 minutes, 10 minutes, is absolutely the most anxiety-ridden thing I've ever witnessed in my life, like in a movie. It gives me, I'm going to freak out just talking about it. It drives me up the fucking wall in so many ways.
You know what this scene reminded me of, though, and I couldn't get it out of my head as I was watching it, is in the first Shrek, when all of the characters have to come to the swamp. They're all like kicked out of the kingdom.
It's true.
Like them like pushing Snow White on the table, and like he pulls back the covers, and it's the wolf in the grandmother's outfit. It's all I could think of.
I wish I could say that's what went through my mind.
Oh, Shrek's just trying to have his nice dinner with his earwax candles, and here come all of these people. That's all he could think about. It is very stressful, though.
For me, as a children's librarian, this reminds me of If You Give a Mouse a Cookie. And because like you give that mouse a cookie, and then he's going to want some milk. And if you give him milk, then he's going to want a napkin. And if you give him a napkin, then like he's going to throw a Molotov cocktail into your house. And then like women will be taken into slavery. And then like a cult will form around this mouse, and then like to satisfy his cultish urges, you're going to give him a cookie. And then the whole cycle is going to fucking continue. Like I cannot read those books at story time because I think of Mother. Those books gave me anxiety even as a child. And then like this movie just highlighted why. It's like, you will never get this fucking mouse out of your life. Like, do not give that mouse anything. He will never leave you.
I can't wait for the YA retelling of this story.
I want to contact, I think Felicia Bond is the illustrator. I want to contact Felicia Bond. I want to contact Aronofsky and do one of those kids' picture book versions of this movie, illustrated by her.
Oh my God.
Jennifer Lawrence can be a little sexy mouse, like going around the house.
When you give the man a room to stay.
Oh, yes.
Paris.
Oh my God. And yeah, make them all mice, little sexy Michelle
Yeah.
Pfeiffer mouse. She's been Catwoman. She can be Mouse Woman. Like just.
Sexy
Oh
little
my
mouse.
God.
Yeah. So anyway, we're getting into the if you give a mouse a cookie / Shrek part of the movie. So Michelle Pfeiffer is constantly glaring at at Jennifer Lawrence throughout all of this. She gives the fiercest angry glares.
Mhm.
The husband gives a speech. More and more people are just coming into the house as all of this is happening. And Ed Harris is crying and he just asks Jennifer Lawrence to talk.
Which is probably my most nightmare-inducing part of this movie. Just when he goes like, "Can you say something?" And she's like, "What the hell are you even doing in my house? What am I supposed to say?"
All she says is, for your child. Like, that's all she can say.
Right.
And more people keep coming in, and there's these assholes keep sitting on her sink.
Mhm.
And she says, "That sink's not braced yet. Please don't sit on the sink." And then Michelle Pfeiffer's mad and she's smoking in the house.
Yep. Michelle
And she
Pfeiffer
says,
oh, sorry, go ahead.
"No, you-"
I was going to say, because she says one of my favorite lines, which is like, "You could have at least put on something decent."
Yes, and then Jennifer Lawrence realizes
She's
she's been
wearing
in her sheer
pajamas.
nightgown. She's been in her nightgown this whole time.
She had no time.
She goes upstairs and there is this couple in her bedroom. And again, this is probably, again, I've got to do some deep therapy because I don't know what it is about this in particular that sends me into a rage. But she says, "Please leave this bedroom." And he goes, "We'll just be a minute." And that right there, like I'm twitching, I'm shaking, thinking of that. It's like, this is her bedroom.
Yeah.
And these people are acting like they own the place.
Yeah. Actually, one of the only parts of this movie that I laughed at, and I'm sorry if I jump a little bit ahead of what you're going to say, but when she leaves the bedroom and there's people like on the landing and she goes, "Can you please go downstairs?" And they go, "This way?"
Yes.
So like upstairs, and it's like, "Oh, you dimwit, you go downstairs."
Yes.
Downstairs.
I laughed. That's probably like all the times I laughed, I kind of giggled, but that I did it out loud cackle. Like, you've got to be fucking kidding me. These people.
That was literally her face. Was, "Are you fucking kidding me?"
She's just in shock the whole time, and like she goes to take her yellow medicine, and this guy comes into the bathroom while she's drinking her medicine.
Yep.
So she changes into a dress and she goes downstairs and like people are painting the house.
Painting walls.
She says, "Why are you painting my house?" And the guy says, "Oh, you've been so kind to us. It's the least we could do."
He says, "I used to do this in the summers."
Right? And she was like, "I didn't fucking ask you. Like, get out of my house." Not the right color anyway. Like,
yeah.
And, yeah, you're right. No, they're just painting it white. Like, they're just painting it white. And we know she doesn't like just white because she's been trying to tint everything. And so, of course, she has to like clean up she's trying to clean up everything. These assholes are still on the sink. Please get down from there. And she turns, the camera is right on her face, and you see behind her, they just hop. They hop right back on that sink as soon as she turns around. I probably in the theater by myself screamed. Like I'm
so filled with rage.
It makes me so mad. To me, like the sinking mother is the scariest thing in a movie. Like you've got Chucky, you've got Freddy, you've got the sinking mother. Like these are like iconic movie monsters. Like this fucking sink. And so then this man comes in and starts hitting on her in her own house. He calls her an arrogant cunt, which I had forgotten. I said, "Whoa."
Yeah. I was like, "Oh, I forgot that progressed really fast."
Yeah.
Whoa. And then she turns around and she goes, get down from there. And the person on the sink goes, "From where?"
Oh.
Right, and you're like, "Bitch, your ass is on my sink."
Oh my God. And then they start bouncing up and down saying, "It's fine, it's fine." And then it pulls the pipes from the wall, Water starts spraying everywhere. She get the fuck out of my house.
Oh, so good.
And then Javier Bardem, completely oblivious man. What happened?
And she's like, and she just looks at him like,
she says they won't listen. And it's just like the most, I feel like you just cannot be more helpless than this. Like, this is the most helpless you can ever be. Like, they just won't listen. And it's like, oh my God. It's also like dealing with children.
Yeah.
yeah. There's a lot to read into about this movie. Like, it's insane, like how every single scene, I mean, obviously we're going to get into it and it's going to be a wild discussion. But like, I tell you, yeah, I was sitting there and I'm a teen librarian, and so I see literally the other day I have a table that like flips up and it's broken, and I kept telling the teens, stop sitting on the table, sit on the chairs, and they're like, what's gonna happen? And the table flipped up and I'm like, that. So I felt like Jennifer Lawrence, but I can't yell, get the fuck out of my library. I can't do that. I'll get fired.
This movie is like stupid realistic.
Well, that was this week, and I was like, daggone, I watched this movie on Tuesday, I think.
Yeah.
Like Tuesday or Wednesday, and I was like, oh my God, this is Thursday.
You manifested it.
Did. Doggone it, mother.
So she has to go turn off the water main. She gets into a huge argument with her husband. That escalates into kind of like a marital rape type almost encounter. He's very aggressive with her. She's pushing him away, but then she kind of acts like she likes it. And then the narrator says, her head tilts back in ecstasy, giving her a view of the night sky through the octagonal skylight. The picture fades to white.
Oh, interesting.
All right.
And so, I love timing things. We're basically at the exact halfway point now of this movie, time-wise, a little past. So in the morning, the narrator says, her glossy lips fall agape. And she, like, why does he say glossy? Like he's not lying, but like, why is that what you're pointing out? I don't get it.
No.
So she knows she's pregnant. She's like, I'm pregnant. And he jumps up and he's naked and he's inspired to write now. And so she's pregnant and he's ignoring her and going to his work. And she says, I don't want to interrupt. I'll just get started on the apocalypse.
And we're
yuck. So she ends up dumping her medicine down the toilet. And then we get this time shift because now she's like 9 months pregnant. There is a funny behind the scenes on the Blu-ray where Jennifer Lawrence is crawling across a bunch of people who are actors who are alive but playing dead bodies, and Jennifer Lawrence is just screaming, I'm 9 months pregnant, as she's crawling over them. And then they cut and she has to like get up and go back, and she kind of steps on someone. She's like, oh, sorry. Like, as terrible as this movie is, it almost, parts of it seem kind of fun to make. So we have this time shift. She's very pregnant. The guest room is now a nursery, and she's got some new floorboards to replace that bloody hole. And the husband, the baby kicks, and I've not been pregnant. Well, also neither of you have been pregnant, to my knowledge, but like, or especially not this pregnant. But like, do babies' feet protrude in that way?
Think so.
I hope like hell not. I didn't want to be pregnant beforehand. I certainly don't now.
That baby's foot
if you heard the southern accent come out, you'll know it's very serious.
Like when the baby kicks, like it's like alien or something.
Sometimes you can like see a little bit of like a like I've had like gas and I can see my stomach
make a little burble.
Kind of burble, you know? Like,
yeah.
And I think it's similar to that. I don't think that you see a foot and almost an ankle stretching the skin. I'm gonna say I'm not a doctor.
I hope not.
Yeah.
I hope not. Like miracle of life and all, but
yeah,
I don't
disgusting.
Know. I'll go eat a ton of Taco Bell tomorrow and I'll let you know.
Yeah, let us know if you like if we can see your gordita wrap through like your belly or something.
I got you.
pokes through. So of course it's the baby kick. She's like, the baby kicked. And the husband's like, well, I finished my poem. So she reads his poem. And when she reads it, we get this image of him in the burned field. And he takes a woman's hand. And the narrator says it returns grass to the scorched earth. And then like the house is finished. So we're basically seeing the scene we saw like way back at the beginning of the movie. Now, whenever we never see the poem, we never hear the poem as the audience. Whenever we kind of see the document, it just looks like illegible calligraphy.
Yeah,
like,
and it
doesn't even look like it has words.
It's on like sort of a weird size. Like, I don't know if it was supposed to represent some like 10 Commandments thing, but he wrote it on like have you ever made a God, what's the word? Like a scrapbook, like scrapbook size paper. Like it's, it's regular 8.5 by 11. It's very bizarre.
Yeah, it's a big square.
Yeah,
a huge square. And so she loves it. She loves the poem, but she asks him, am I going to lose you? And he says, never. And then the phone rings and he says, oh, it's my publisher. She loves it. And this is, again, I start to flame. She goes, she's read it? And he goes, of course.
Yeah.
Like,
awful.
So then the blood spot, there's a blood spot that appears on the rug where the blood spot was before. But when she lifts up the rug, the boards are still clean. So there's some time passing. She's making a very fancy dinner to celebrate his book sales. And these people show up at the house. And she's trying to get ready for dinner. And this man goes outside. And basically all of his fans have shown up. Yeah. And he says, they've come here to see me.
Of course. He wrote a poem. Great.
They're flocking. God. They're flocking through the woods on a non-snowy evening to see this bitch. And she is pacing around the nursery. And the blood stain is growing. The boards are rotting again. And he tries to drag her outside to meet these people. They want to meet you. And she goes, I want to be alone with you. Yeah. And then we're getting kind of like back to the wake where people are coming into the house and all in a way that is making her feel bad for wanting them to leave. Because like, it's a mom with her kid. My kid has to use the bathroom. And she's just like, fine.
Go in the woods.
I know. And then there's and then when Jennifer Lawrence leaves the bathroom, there's a line to get into the bathroom. Yeah. And the guy's like, lady, wait your turn. It's like, oh my God.
It's like you feel like you're out at the nightclubs again.
Oh, and yeah, there's a guy who's like curled up and trying to sleep in her house. And
and then because she tries to move him and he says, why were you gonna sleep here?
Right? And she's just like,
oh my God, these people
in this movie are just perfect. And they're so infuriating, but funny at the same time.
Yeah.
Yes.
Sassy people.
Yeah.
And so there's this man who will show up and he's credited, because no one has real names, as the Zealot. So I will call him that because I don't know how else to do the plot summary without it, because he's going to be this pivotal figure throughout the rest of this. So this man who's credited as the Zealot is in her kitchen and taking her food. And he says, the poet says it's everyone's house. And then he takes the cake that she made. And God, I was ragging this guy for saying this movie was funny. And now I'm like laughing at all the funny parts. I guess detached from it, it's funny. Because he slices the cake with a spoon.
That's an impressive power.
And like, she is just like, look, like, you've got to be fucking kidding me. Like, this guy takes this beautiful cake she made and he's just sticking a spoon into it.
Oh my goodness.
I think we're so horrified that it's funny.
Yeah.
Oh, definitely. It's just like, oh my God, you have to laugh at it because it's so awful. And so they set up an autograph table for him to sign autographs. And then I definitely said out loud, what the fuck? When Kristen Wiig walks into the room.
Literally. Because I also heard her voice first and she has such a distinct voice. I was like, who is that?
Yeah.
And it's Kristen freaking Wiig.
This adds to the dream quality of it. We're like, you have a dream and like randomly a celebrity will show up in your dream.
Yeah,
That's what it makes me think of.
that's fair. I
Like,
could see Kristen Wiig showing up in my dreams.
Yeah.
I wish I had pulled it up before we had started recording. Hang on, I'm gonna see if I can find something real quick. You guys talk amongst yourselves.
Okay.
Sounds good.
Because I used to keep an online journal
Oh
and I
man.
would write my dreams in it.
Oh, do you still
And
have your live journal account? Is that where we're going?
so it wasn't live journal. It was called Open Diary.
Oh my God. We're getting back
Were you
into
on
the
there?
dregs. Sadly, yeah, we're getting back into the dregs of like 2005 internet. I was about to say, which if we have any kids in here, you're very lucky if your parents never picked up the phone when you were trying to get online.
Oh, I know. That was always the worst.
Oh,
straight up.
Our fax machine still makes that noise, like that dial-up noise sometimes, and it like transports me. It's like I'm like, and I'm like trying to play Sims.
That's what this movie does to us. It makes us feel like poor Jennifer Lawrence is like that Sim that just keeps catching the kitchen on fire and like doesn't know what to do. And she just really wants to make that goofy carbonara.
Yeah. And like she opened her house up one time to her neighbors and now they keep showing up.
Shit. And they're like all talking in Simlish like in her house and she's just like, get the fuck out of my house. And they're like, like
and she's like, how are you in here? I don't even have a driveway.
Yeah, like Sims just let themselves in your house and they sit down on your couch and you go and you're like, oh hey, what's up? You like stranger.
Yeah. And they eat your food and they use your bathroom.
Yep. Rude.
Well, maybe I'll find an excuse to read from my old online journal another time. But I remember reading out loud to a friend once all of my dreams, and one of them it's like Snooki was in a garbage can, and like I used to just watch a lot of TV, and all of my dreams were populated with these different TV characters. So that's what this reminds me of.
That's great.
So Kristen Wiig is his publicist, and she's struggling with the zealot. They framed his poem, and people then start looting the house. This is going to escalate. And her husband kind of like hugs someone and then accidentally smudges her forehead with ink. And then everyone wants him to mark them. So he's marking everybody with his thumb. People are dancing around with the framed poem. And Jennifer Lawrence manages to get upstairs and she sees just dozens of people coming in through the woods. People are just flocking towards the house. So she's got a bag, presumably like our hospital bag, like for her labor bag packed. So she grabs this bag and she is trying to get out of the house. And she sees the zealot. He's now marking people as her husband did, like for him. And people are pinning pictures of the husband to the door of the study that's been boarded up. A rave breaks out.
Yeah, that was really like, what's the word? Like disconcerting because like Caitlin mentioned earlier, like there isn't really a lot of music in that movie. So you hear like the thong thong, like the thudding of electro music. And you're like, what the hell is that? Is that in the movie or is that like a soundtrack choice? No, it's people having a rave.
Yeah, it's so strange. She finds looters tearing the nursery apart. And she says, why are you doing this? And the guy says, proof we were here. And I feel like that's the Mother Earth shit Aronofsky's trying to get to, like, oh, look at these people destroying the earth.
Yeah.
And so she's trying to leave, but the zealot and her husband are holding her back, and she starts to have contractions. And whenever she has contractions, the whole world shakes behind her. It's very intense. Cops break in and they mace them.
Yeah, it's this is like the point in the movie where it goes from 0 to a billion, like just
Yeah.
insane.
And it's so fast. Like
It's
the
so
point,
fast.
like by the time you've seen one part and you're trying to think about it, you're already on to
Yeah.
the next, and then it jumps to the next, and you're like, I haven't had time to process the 20 other things I just saw.
Exactly. Like, and like I said, I went into this movie really not knowing anything, so I didn't even know that it sort of was like, it's hard to describe, but like you could kind of say it's like a supernatural movie in a way. Like, again, it's hard to describe because it's not like a typical supernatural movie, but I didn't know that there was anything necessarily like unrealistic, quote unquote, about this movie. Like, I thought it was going to be like just a horrifying, you know, horror movie. Like, so when all of this was happening, it is so just knocks you out of left field. It's so wild.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, things escalate very quickly.
Mhm.
We see women being locked into cages.
Mhm.
People are throwing Molotov cocktails. There's riot police.
It
So
also
very
was like, how is all of this happening in this one house? Like,
in this house.
Yeah, and like every single room, like we've made it to like 2 to 3 different rooms, and each room something insane is happening.
insane. Oh.
Yeah. Kristen Wiig is executing
Yes, she's like
Yeah.
shooting people in the back of the head.
Yeah, and then
Two
she's like
at a
brings
time.
some more.
Yes.
And she's just
And-
like looking at the ground like the badass that she is, and she's just firing off, no thoughts, not even pausing in a step, and was like just turns around
yeah.
like, bam, hey guys.
She like shoots a bunch
Mhm.
of people, and then doesn't she like look up at Jennifer Lawrence and is like, "Oh, there you are."
Yes.
And in the same chipper tone, she says, we're going to kill, basically, we're going to kill you next. Like, we're going to kill you too. And then there's an explosion, takes out Kristen Wiig.
Mhm.
And so Jennifer
God.
Lawrence is trying to escape. Again, she's 9 months pregnant. She's going into labor. A soldier comes in to like try to carry her through this war zone. He gets his head blown off.
Yeah.
Her husband shows up. I think he's wearing a gas mask at this
Mhm.
point. And he's taking her through the house. He will not let her leave. She keeps saying, there's the door.
Let's go that
And
way.
he keeps taking her elsewhere. The whole house is now a refugee camp.
Mhm.
And the followers are grabbing for him. And he's trying to boost her up onto the second floor landing where that study is. And this zealot helps her get up onto the balcony. He busts open the study and they retreat inside.
Can I just mention real quick a part of this movie that I don't know if it's supposed to be making a point, but there's a brief time when Jennifer Lawrence is like alone on the landing outside of the study, and because he's trying to break in, and there's a woman there who's actually a doctor, and she is probably the only one in this whole movie who gives a shit about Jennifer Lawrence. And
Yeah.
That's true.
like genuinely cares. I don't know if the director's trying to make a point, but she's a Black woman, and she is the only, I think she might be the only Black woman we see too, and she's the only one who gives a shit. Like,
Yeah.
and then
Yeah, but-
Javier Bardem shoves her out of the way, and he's like,
Yeah.
I gotta go. He literally
Yeah.
pushes her.
Yeah, like I was thinking the same thing, like her and then that one soldier that tries to help her. They're
Yes.
the only two people that at any point are like, come on, like let me help you. Like I'm
Yeah.
here.
Like,
Meanwhile,
kind of
Javier's
shit.
just like, bitch, that's mine.
Yeah, move.
Like, sorry, you can't have
I got
none.
this cold dank ass room. I want
Straight
my
up. And that which leads into that next scene, which is wild.
Yes.
creepy.
So she screams and the scene fades to white and we hear it's a boy.
Mhm.
And so she's had her baby and she says, why are they so quiet? And this bitch goes to open the door. She goes, don't do that.
Don't
And of
do
course he opens the door. He comes back with like a fruit basket, I think. And
Yep.
she begs him to make them go.
Mhm.
And he says, I don't want them to go. And she does not want him to hold the baby. And he says, I'm his father. And she goes, I'm his mother.
Yeah.
Exclamation point. Exclamation point.
Mother!
So they stare at each other for hours, like at least 2 days pass, maybe. Like we see the sun and then it's dark and then it's sunny again. Lots of shots of this very cute baby.
Yeah.
And he's just staring at her. Oh, so creepy. And she kind of is struggling to fall asleep. And she does that kind of like head jerk motion, like she just fell asleep. But then the baby's gone. And so she runs outside and sees that he's out on the landing. He's given the baby to the crowd. They're like crowd surfing this baby above them. The baby is peeing everywhere.
Yeah.
And then it's
that part was disgusting.
Oh, and then it's neck snaps. And like we are a podcast that is pro terrible things happening to children, but this is too far.
This is too much.
Caitlin, if you have listened to our other, you know that we love it when children die in movies. We are so pro. Kill them kids in the movies. Kill them.
I mean, that's why I'm a teen librarian. I'm not a children's librarian. So
yeah. Like
I like them when they're older, but I'm just like,
and I think we love it because it's like so unexpected. It's like such a good like use of their character.
Yeah.
Well, because you don't think they're gonna go there. You really don't think they're gonna make, because again, like the absence of sound and like the way they use sound in this movie, the fact that they make that so sharp.
Oh.
I remember seeing it for the first time in theater, and everybody was like, like,
yeah.
And my dad, of course, my dad. If any of you, I know you guys haven't met my father. He's like 6 foot tall, like biker dude, redneck man, and he literally was like, "Oh shit!" And I was like, "Well, yeah, that was horrifying.
It's awful.
Ooh, that like sticks with me. I can still see it like very viscerally, and ooh."
That is the one thing I kind of knew about this movie, is that the baby dies. And the way I read about it is they described it as the baby's neck broke under the weight of its own head. And I was picturing something different. I was picturing this baby to come out with a giant ass head. But I think this might actually be worse. It's because
you can see it. That's the thing, is that they don't hide it from you.
No,
like you straight up see it, and you're like, oh my god, like I just witnessed that.
Right. It does feel a little gratuitous in this. And this is something I'll ask you guys later. I don't necessarily understand the point of the baby, but again, we don't have to touch on that right now. We can touch on that later. I got
a lot of thoughts.
I'm very confused about the baby.
We'll get into the baby. We'll get into this baby.
We'll put a pin in the baby.
Yeah, we'll put a pin in that baby. Just as everybody else is doing, because they are eating the baby. They're like, they're eating the baby. She shows up. There's just like rib cage, and then they're all just, and the narrator for the visually impaired says that they are eating, quote, morsels of her baby. And I'm like, don't say morsels. Don't say morsels.
No, morsels makes it sound like it's appetizing. No.
I know.
We're not
and like
chocolate chip for the baby.
No. So she is pissed, clearly. That's understating it. She's so mad. I forget what happened. Somebody knocks her to the ground or something. She gets this piece of broken glass and she just starts killing them. Like she's cutting their face. She kills a kid, which is great. Pro killing this kid. There's like this 10-year-old and she just like slits his throat and he falls to the ground. Yeah. And she's just like stabbing people. But then like they beat her so violently. They tear her top off. They call her a whore. The crowd just turns on her in one of the most violent things I've ever seen in a movie. And I have seen lots of Lars von Trier movies. I have seen terrible things happen to women on screen. And this is absolutely one of the worst things I've ever seen.
It's pretty bad.
It's terrible. And then the husband comes in to stop them. Like, dude, where have you been this whole time?
Right.
And he says, we have to find a way to forgive them.
Oh yeah, and it's like he's like, look, see how sorry they all are? They're all so sorry, and they're sitting there crying. And I'm like, I'm sorry, you just ate quote unquote morsels of my child. You beat the shit out of me, and now you want me to forgive you? What kind of toxic BS is this? Like, nah, I don't think so. And oh God, I'll tell you. And the fact that he's genuine about it, he's like, we gotta find a way to forgive them.
No.
No.
No, sir. And she says, it's time to get the fuck out of my house. And she screams. And when she screams, the house literally just shatters. Because she has sensed that she's seen that little heart in the house and it's dead. Like it's shriveled into this little black thing. And so she grabs Ed Harris's lighter. And she goes into what the narrator calls a, quote, rocky vaginal cavern in the basement.
Oh. All right, man. Now I've got to check this movie out again from the library and do this.
We talked about the vagina tree in Sleepy Hollow, and that is very clearly a vagina tree.
I did not get vagina from this.
This like it's not like it's like a door. It's a door. It's square.
It's because it's a tunnel.
I mean, unless we're like throwing a hot dog down a hallway, like it ain't going like, you know what I mean?
Right?
Like, no, I didn't get that.
No. So that was a surprise from our narrator for the visually impaired.
Okay.
I want a visually impaired person to watch this movie, and then I'd be able to be like, slide him a piece of paper, draw me the cavern, like draw me what that looks like, and just match them up and see. That was bizarre. So inside the rocky vaginal cavern, there's an oil tank, and she busts it open, and she says, "You never loved me. You only loved how much I loved you. I gave you everything, and you gave it all away." And she drops the lighter, and like the whole house explodes. Everyone burns. And then we see the scene from the beginning, except this time it's Jennifer Lawrence looking into the camera, the tear, she closes her eyes, her skin's all crispy. And then you'd think this would be the end of the movie. But no. We have to have her carrying her burned corpse up the stairs. And he says to her, "I am I, and you are home." And she says, "Where are you taking me?" And he says, "The beginning." And she says that what hurts me the most is that I wasn't enough. And he says, "It's never enough. I couldn't create if it was." And he says, "I need one last thing." And she says, "I have nothing left to give." And he says, "Your love." Oh, and then he reaches into her chest and he pulls out her heart.
Yeah, like pulled pork.
And he like kind of crunches it a bit and it becomes the crystal.
Yeah.
And then the narrator says, quote, "With an emotional, beady-eyed smile, he blows off the dust."
All right.
Okay.
And then the narrator is very observant, and the narrator has realized, we're now back at the beginning. And he says the exact same line: "The shape of a woman rises from a desiccated lump under the covers of the bed and reveals an unfamiliar face."
Oh,
and so this another woman who we have not seen comes up, and it's the mirror image of the scene from the beginning, or the exact image. And she says, "Baby." And then we get that song about like, "You don't know it's the end of the world.
Oh,
It
yeah.
ended," and they play that. And then the title appears on the screen, and the narrator says, "Mother." The calligraphic title is punctuated with an exclamation point. They are so serious about the exclamation point. And then the credits roll, and I left the credits on. And there's a point in the credits where then like it looks like someone's writing on the screen. And the narrator chimes back in. "Calligraphic scratches appear on the screen as the credits continue."
Oh my God.
Like, thanks, dude. Like, the things that it wants me to pay attention to. But anyway, anything to add to that very long plot summary?
No,
Oh my God.
Please say no.
I think you covered it. Yeah, no.
Yeah.
Okay.
Move on.
So we'll take a short break. We're going to come back with something new. We're going to come back with a little game, and then we'll get into our Gothic roundup. All right, we ghosties, we're back with our Gothic roundup. But first, That's So Gothic premiere of a Gothic game. So, all right. So here's how the game's gonna work. I guess we had to spice up the most depressing movie ever with the fun game. So, as we talked about, no one in this movie has a real name, and most of the people in the movie are not called anything, but they all have a name in the credits. So, what I'm gonna do, you guys are gonna take turns. I'm gonna give you a name, and you're gonna tell me if that's a character in Mother or not. So, it's either a character in Mother or it's an unnamed character from another work of fiction.
Ooh.
Okay. So you will say Mother or not the Mother. All right. So Caitlin, you're our guest, so we're gonna make you go first.
Yeah.
All right.
All right. Okay. Are you ready?
Yep.
Pisser.
I'm gonna go with Mother because of the guy that just is standing and just pissing in the toilet.
Ding, you got it. Pisser, yes. Played by Greg Bello.
Ooh.
Good job, Greg Bello. You were a great pisser. Can't wait to see who is shitter.
All right, Amanda. Cupbearer.
Yes. Mother.
Mother, ding, played by Jovan Adepo.
Ooh. Was he the one who hit on Jennifer Lawrence?
I think he's the one that sits on her bed and paints her wall.
Ah, okay.
Because I only know that because the narrator would call him that.
I only remember I did briefly look through the cast. I won't know everyone, but I remember, and I'm actually, this might give you a leg up, Caitlin. So I'm gonna keep this information myself.
Save it for the end of the game.
Okay.
All right, Caitlin. Bride.
Not Mother.
Not Mother. That's Uma Thurman in Kill Bill.
I haven't seen Kill Bill.
She's the bride.
I'm slacking bad.
You are. All right, Amanda. Mariner.
Not Mother.
Not Mother. That's Kevin Costner in Waterworld.
Got a good one. Right, that one.
Caitlin. Epicure.
Epicure?
Epicure.
Ooh. I don't know what it means. I'm going to go with... It sounds like something that would be in this movie, so I'm going to go with Mother.
Mother, you are correct. Epicure is played by Kumba Ball, and it means a gourmand.
I don't even know what that means.
Maybe there's someone who eats the baby and likes it. I don't know. You know, they discerning tastes.
Okay.
All right, Amanda, protagonist.
Not Mother?
Not Mother. That's John David Washington in Tenet.
Oh my god.
So, Caitlin, fornicator.
Oh god. I'm gonna say Mother again.
Correct. Yes, fornicator, played by Stanley Herman in Mother.
Yes.
Amanda, capable.
Ooh, not Mother.
Not Mother. That's Riley Keough at Mad Max Fury Road.
Ah.
Caitlin, anthropologist.
Not Mother.
Not Mother. That's a character in the book Annihilation by Jeff Vandermeer.
Oh. Okay.
Amanda, driver.
Driver. Not Mother.
Not Mother. That's Ryan Gosling in Drive.
I was thinking Driving Miss Daisy.
Driving Miss Daisy.
I thought that movie. Serious.
That movie may be like low key racist, but he did at least have a name. Caitlin, supplicant.
These are some big words.
I know. I feel like you're getting really big words. I'm so sorry.
No, it's fine. I'm gonna go with Mother.
Mother, you are correct. Supplicant, played by Mylene Savoy.
Heck yeah.
A supplicant is a person who asks God or someone who is in a position of power for something in a humble way.
Oh, okay.
All right, Amanda, Wanderer.
Oh, that's a tough one. I feel like I was really sure of all my other answers. Wanderer. I'm gonna say not Mother.
So I'm going to give it to you. Technically, it is Mother, but there's also a character named Wanderer in Stephanie Meyer's The Host.
Oh my God. I forgot that was ever a movie.
So you get a half point. But Wanderer
Meyer.
is played by Abraham Aronofsky, Darren's daddy.
Oh, how cute.
Yes. All right, Caitlin. Whoremonger.
I'm probably gonna say Mother.
Mother, you are correct. Played by Genti Bejko. I assume he's the guy that locks the women up in the cage.
That's what I was thinking. I was like seeing that scene very vividly. This was like,
Yeah. And then last question, Amanda. Fool.
Yes, Mother. And can I get a bonus point? She's played by Emily Hampshire.
Yes, I had no idea who that was, but Ryan's a big Schitt's Creek fan, and he has also
That's
seen this
impressive.
movie. And I said, does the name Emily Hampshire mean anything to you? And he goes, oh yes, she's so and so in Schitt's Creek. I said, she's the one who breaks the sink in Mother, and he was like, oh my God,
it's awful. I hate
oh my God, that's crazy.
So great job, you guys aced the game. Congratulations, you guys both get to stay on the show.
Yay!
So let's get into our Gothic roundup. So every Gothic movie has 4 categories: a girl, a guy, a haunt, and a house. And
oh God,
this movie is so complicated because I feel like I know who all these people are, but like, who the fuck are these people? So like, like the girl is clearly Jennifer Lawrence.
Yeah.
But like, who the hell is she?
Who is she?
Who is she?
Seriously,
Because
though,
we're
I
getting
feel
into
like
this.
who isn't even a question. Like, what is she?
What is she? We're getting into this allegory thing. And as we said, Aronofsky says that this movie is about the destruction of Mother Earth, and Jennifer Lawrence is a personification of Mother Earth. I do not buy that for 1 second.
No,
And if that's what he thinks this movie is, it does not work. Because I could buy the house being Earth, the house as a stand-in for Earth, and we'll get more to the house in a bit. But I do not buy her as being like, Gaia or this, these personifications of Mother Earth that we've seen before. And so when I first saw this movie on my Letterboxd review, I wrote that this film was about being in a relationship with the ultimate narcissist, God.
Oh.
And I saw her more as like the Virgin Mary. And the baby being Jesus, and having this escalation of her having the baby being murdered. And then since I don't know if it's just Catholics or what, believing that the Eucharist is the flesh of Christ and the wine is the blood of Christ, taking that literally. And so they are literally eating her baby as a tribute, to them, it's positive. And it's like, what would Mary think if she saw people eating her baby? Like that's where I went with it. To be honest, despite being raised in Mississippi, very limited biblical knowledge.
That I feel like makes a lot of sense.
Okay.
And like I'm not, again, despite being raised in Mississippi, was not religious. Like I really lucked out on that. I don't have a lot of biblical knowledge, but there is, she is the Holy Mother, right? Mary is the mother. So, I see that as well. So I see her being Mary and the house being like Earth. That's where the Earth, his whole thing comes into with the destruction of the house. I feel like, and maybe as a director, maybe he's more concerned with the destruction of the house than he is with her, to be honest. So maybe that's where he's getting this reading from. But
yeah, no, I can get on board with that. I mean, yeah, I mean, you can kind of see like the house as the earth. I mean, and it's, you know, it's the only thing that's there. The only thing I could compare it to at one point with when she was like, when the house started like shattering and breaking apart, it reminded me of, I'm going to tell you how badly I failed geography and history here in a minute, and science. I'm not doing good for myself. But like when, you know, the earth like split and the continents became like separate. I want to say it's
Pangea.
Pangea. Thank you. I was like, it's a pan something.
Love Pangea. Yeah.
Yeah, but I mean, it is
That's
like
interesting.
it's like a massive biblical reference. I mean, you can kind of get that with like Ed Harris, like as the Adam, because they take the rib and make Eve. And every time he writes, something is created. Like, I think, you know, you can't get away from knowing that he is God. But yeah, you think about like the gaslight and his whole like convincing nature. And he's always, except for the very few moments he snaps, he's very calm and collected. And it's like, well, what are you talking about? We've always talked about this. And you're like, bruh, no.
Right. Right. And they all want his love. He thrives on their attention. You know, he would not exist were it not for his believers. And that's his main priority at her expense.
I like that explanation because, like I sort of mentioned earlier, I did not know how to interpret the baby, because I think if you are thinking of Jennifer Lawrence as Mother Nature, what the fuck is the baby then?
What's the baby?
What's the baby? And then, because the only thing I could think of, my kind of interpretation, I won't get too much into it because the more we talk about it, like the more I'm like, I do think my interpretation is wrong, which is fine. Like, I can admit that. But when I was done watching it, I kind of thought, I think Javier Bardem, I did not see him as a God figure, and I think that's incorrect, but like I didn't. Like, there's the whole scene where he's on like the third level and looking down, which is very godlike. And
and he's framed by that light halo.
Yeah, so I think it's like very obvious he's supposed to be, but I was thinking maybe he was actually supposed to be humanity, and then like all of the people who come in are sort of representing like the worst of humanity. And then she was Mother Earth, and then the two of them, because, and I might piss off religious folks, the two of them,
you're always pissed anyway.
I know, they're always angry about something. The two of them come up with religion, the baby, and then like I took it as like a God is dead thing. You killed the baby. Because in my religion can't exist in a vacuum, so the two of them created it. But
I mean, technically this movie is one massive allegory and one massive metaphor, so technically you can really take it any direction that you want.
It's true.
All we like, it is, it's a lot to think about.
It's a lot to think about. And yeah, I think the first time I saw it, I was definitely just like dizzy and shaking with anxiety and being upset. And then only when I saw the credits that he was him, capital H, did the whole God thing come into mind. But again, Aronofsky's the one who named him. I do not agree with Aronofsky's Mother Nature theory. So you don't have to believe what he says at all.
No, I don't. Oh, so go ahead.
No, you go on.
No, because I don't agree with that at all, because it's like, if it was supposed to be like climate change and, you know, what can happen in the after effects, like I feel like you get a really like odd reading of that movie. I just don't feel like it really feeds into that story as well.
Right.
And it discounts her role completely.
Yes.
And the fact that it becomes a loop, like that feels disingenuous to me, because we only got one planet, baby. It's not legit happening. Like, so I'm really like excited about your interpretation, Chance, because I think that makes a lot of sense.
Well, I think just from my own personal experiences, and this trauma of being in a relationship with someone who is a narcissist, I really keyed into that. But then there's a book that I read that I will not get into right now, called oh shit, hang on, let me look up what it's called. It really affected me in a deep way. It is called The Selfishness of Others, an essay on the fear of narcissism by Kristen Wiig. And it is about not narcissists, but the fear of narcissism. And even though that's in the title, that's not what I thought I was getting when I was reading the book. I thought it was going to be this, this indictment of narcissism. But by the time it's over, it's almost an embracing of narcissism, and how she gets into this thing where the people who fear narcissists the most or hate them the most are narcissists themselves and unable to recognize that within themselves. And I'm oversimplifying her argument, but reading that essay and going into this movie, I was thinking about the narcissistic qualities of Jennifer Lawrence's character, because there's no compromise between the two of them. She wants him all to herself, which is its own narcissistic quality. It's not like, oh, let's just let a few of them in. It's, we need everyone gone. She wants it just to be the two of them isolated together, which is kind of just as controlling and weird as he is being, even though she's the one who totally gets fucked over in the end. But for me, this is what's coming into, I think Aronofsky is a hack, and I don't think he knows exactly what he's putting out into the world, because I feel like a lot of this is subconscious, and him, as a great big fucking narcissist, has made his two main characters narcissists without maybe necessarily realizing it.
That's a really good point.
I've been very sick and just thinking about this movie for like 19 hours. So I put a lot of thought into this.
Yeah.
And so I also had this probably fever dream like flashback to this interview. I'm going way into the weeds with this, and I apologize. But this interview that Ileana Douglas did on Fresh Air on NPR in 2015.
Wow, all right.
It's always stuck with me.
Archives.
It's always stuck with me, and I was able to pull it up from the archives. And so I don't know much about Ileana Douglas other than I really love Stir of Echoes with Kevin Bacon, and she's very good in that. And she was in a relationship with Martin Scorsese for a long time. Mm-hmm. And she said from this interview, when I was getting interviewed, they'd say, what are the influences of Martin Scorsese on your work? And I would tell them. And nobody ever once said to him, what are the influences of Ileana Douglas on your work? And she said, I'm not just speaking for myself. I'm speaking of many women, Alma Hitchcock, Polly Platt, and Peter Bogdanovich. No interviewer ever asked about my contributions, and that's not me being conceited. It's just that I stand with many other women that collaborated with filmmakers that don't get proper credit. And that's something that stuck with me for a very long time. And I think about that a lot when I think about this movie and Jennifer Lawrence and Darren Aronofsky maybe being in a relationship. And this is what comes out of it.
Well, and also like mirroring that her character is in a relationship with Javier Bardem, and she's very clearly, even if she's not doing the writing, she's very, clearly she's the homemaker. She's giving him a space to create, and she's his inspiration. It's funny. I feel like we don't really talk about, like, we'll talk about directors' choices and things like that. We don't usually have to delve into who the directors are as people when it comes to movies.
No.
And it's like kind of messing with my brain a little bit, because that's something I will say I don't think about a lot when I'm watching movies, is I don't think about the creator's like background and how it's affecting this movie. But now that you bring it up, it's like it's either so obvious that their relationship was a PR stunt and it was supposed to make people talk about it in this way, or he's so oblivious that he is mirroring this, and I don't know which one it is.
Well, that was one of the criticisms of it, was a lot of people thought that the interpretation was of their relationship, which was a very interesting take on it. Because, like, I know who she is. I don't give a shit who he was at the time. So I was like, oh, this is interesting. I didn't know they were in a relationship. And it talks about like the tumultuousness of the relationship and the listen, the whole like like they won't listen to me, like saying like, you know, well, it's like, but she won't listen to me, or like her saying like he won't listen to me, and it's like a massive communication barrier.
Right.
And so some people were thinking it was a commentary on that, which I think was like a kind of a far reach, I think, but at the same time you can't discount it. I don't think any theory is inherently wrong. I think there's so many ways this can go. It's like you can really take it anywhere you want.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, and as worked up as I get about this movie, this is why I do think it is some sort of creative masterpiece, because like there's just so much to dig into with it.
Yeah.
So I think our guy and our haunt are basically the same thing. And again, it gets into who is the guy? Is he God? You know, is he narcissism incarnate? Is he Darren Aronofsky?
Yeah. I think he makes for one of the most terrifying haunts, because he is a man who writes poetry, and that is horrifying. He wrote one poem and all of this happened.
And he brought about the apocalypse.
Oh my God.
That's so true. It's either that or he plays acoustic guitar. At least that didn't happen in the movie.
Yeah. Right.
Yeah. Another thing I kind of thought about with him very loosely was this was like a far fetch, but the whole like, so that last epic, you know, when she's going through the house and all these wars are happening, the Molotovs are flying and all that, like we're actually, for me, I felt like I was seeing a quick replay of history. So I thought of him as history as well, because you get like, you know, you get like the riots, you get the clear like Holocaust reference, you get like the like in the trenches like references, you get the war like in Afghanistan, you get all of that.
Yeah.
All those historical wars thrown in it, and it's literally within like, I don't know, how long is that scene? Is it like only a couple minutes? It's like really short.
It's like short but long. It's like 15, 20 minutes maybe.
Yeah.
Yeah. And that specific section.
This whole movie, I'm not good at math. Like, I don't know if that's like,
either.
you know, I don't know what curve it is where it's exponential, you know, where like it just kind of tick, 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 tick. And then all of a sudden you're going vertical, you know, it's just like all of a sudden, fuck, I'm disoriented.
Right.
What is happening? Yeah. It's so, it messes with your head.
It really does. So at that point, I kind of was looking at him as history as well, like, because we're getting this retelling, and essentially, like, in the end, like in history, like say like that soldier, for example, or that woman that was trying to help her, no one ever really remembers the good points in history. We only talk about the bad. So, you know, we always think about the horrors of like World War II and the Holocaust, and we always talk about like that, how awful that is. And anybody that's seen Schindler's List can attest to how graphically gruesome that is. And, you know, we see that so vividly, but the kindness in the world, we really don't see it, and we really don't talk about it. So that was another part that I kind of read into it that might be a bit of a far stretch, but something that I thought was interesting.
Well, you could think of him as like sort of being this like leading, because one of the things, and we haven't really talked about it, that the guest sort of can represent at the end is not the four horsemen of the apocalypse, but like the plagues and stuff, you know what I'm talking about?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So, well, yeah, because we got the frog,
right?
And that was one of the plagues.
Yep. So he's kind of bringing forth this, so he could be like I'm just thinking of like a guy riding in a carriage, and it's him, and he's like like all these people are
chariot wheels
behind him. Yeah. So like, or like, you know, Artemis in the sky with his little carriage. Is Artemis the one who makes the sunrise
with the chariot? Yeah,
with the chariot.
I think so. And like,
sure.
I thought of like Kristen Wiig's character, like when she first appeared. Like, it's been a hot minute since I've taken a theology class. But Kristen Wiig's character to me was kind of like Gabriel, like the messenger. And she like freaked me out, and that's why I was scared of her.
Her she's credited as the Herald.
Oh, okay. Yeah. So that's go ahead.
Sorry, I was gonna say, because the thing that it mentioned before that I noticed about some of the names when I was scrolling through, and I don't know where this comes from, but a lot of the names are tarot card names, and so I don't know if tarot cards come from originate. I probably could have
Yeah.
that a little bit better, but I think they're rooted in some sort of theology.
Yeah.
But yeah, like I knew the cupbearer, the fool. I think there was a couple others that had tarot card names.
Isn't the Zealot a card too?
Oh, it might be.
Oh man, I didn't
Yeah.
think about that.
Yeah, so
Like I definitely got the Cain and Abel reference, like
yeah.
those things were pretty obvious. It was when we got into like later where it's just like, this is a mess. And I don't know where I am.
Well, that's the thing, is like the first half seems so biblical, or at least like straightforward in that sense, and then the second half is just like, what the fuck?
Humanity, it's like, because you're right, like you were saying about humanity, like humanity got added in,
Yeah.
and then all of a sudden it went everywhere, because when we saw the torn up picture in the floor, like they drew like the devil's face on him.
Yeah.
Oh,
Well, and
right.
also, like, I mean, there's so many little things, because also the pinned up pictures, that's a Catholic imagery thing.
Yes, it was. And the candles, because I was
Yeah.
raised in the Catholic Church, and so those candles that you light are for like prayers, like for the dead.
Yes. Yeah.
And and you light those in memorial to those people.
Right.
And it's
So
like,
yeah, there's like so many little things, and I feel like there's also a lot of like peppering in of maybe unnecessary things, maybe just to seem a little deep. So that's
yeah,
where I
like
get a little bit.
yeah, like the ashes, like
Yeah.
or the ink, it reminded me of Ash Wednesday,
Ash
when you get the cross
Wednesday,
on your forehead. I gotta go back to the group of people just cannibalizing this poor child for a minute, because like, can we like just talk about how disturbing that is, like when we go to communion or something and you're saying you're eating the body of Christ?
Well, I think what's more disturbing is that they try to pass it off as bread.
Yeah, and you can buy it on Amazon.
You can, and you can buy little wine shooters.
Yeah, I'm like, give me the Jesus. Like, let's
I
go.
kind of want to bring it to like a holiday party, like to a work party or something.
There's a great TikTok of this girl like reading comments on it, and people are like, oh look, I bought Jesus on Amazon, or like, this is sacrilegious, like and it was like killing me.
Growing up, every Sunday when me and my brother would go to church with my family, he would walk in front of me to get the sacrament, and every single Sunday he'd turn to me and he'd go, snack time.
Your brother would have been great in this movie.
He would have been so good. He'd be, snack time.
Yeah, but it's like, there's so much to look into with this movie that like literally you could spend hours. So yeah.
We have.
And we haven't even talked about the house yet, and that's like,
oh yeah,
huge. Like, I don't even know.
Oh yeah, let's talk about the house.
Yeah, so to segue into the house, aren't like also I'm gonna try to wrap up the guy in Haunt. Like Christianity, we're supposed, if I was Christian, I would want to welcome the apocalypse, right? Like I want that to happen, right?
Yeah.
So, and then there could, I don't know about the cyclical nature, but we're supposed to accept it and be driving towards this, so that kind of brings me to the house and the cyclical nature of this house. So the houses we talked about, gorgeous. Love this house. Wish I could live there. Fantastic. Makes me think like, I mean, if I had the independent means, like to just like sit there with my like hot 30 years older than me husband and just like, renovate a house, I could do that. Like, that'd be amazing. I have no handiwork, but I'd learn. And so the house itself, they built 2 sets. So they built the first floor in a field. So like they were in an isolated field, just like the house is, and they built just the first floor, and they filmed all the daytime sequences there where light was shining in through the windows. And then they built the entire full 3-story version of this house on a soundstage. And that's where they shot the nighttime sequences. And they were, according to IndieWire, they were scouting out homes in upstate New York and were drawn to this design from a doctor's house who designed his house. He laid out the house like a human brain. I don't know what that means. I was trying to find images of this house that they had inspired them, but they were inspired by that. And one thing that the narrator mentions a lot is octagons. And he talks about the octagonal window panes frequently. And so I went to BibleStudy.org and looked up the meaning of the number 8 in the Bible. And the number 8 represents a new beginning, meaning a new order or creation, and man's born again event when he is resurrected from the dead into eternal life.
Interesting.
Huh. I did not get that.
Yeah, so I would never have thought of it if it wasn't for that narrator bringing it up all the time.
Yes. Yeah.
Octagonal windows.
I was just thinking how the house was like perfectly symmetrical from the outside.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't even know there was 8 sides. I didn't. Well, and also
either.
octagon, you fight in an octagon. There was a lot of fighting happening.
That's interesting.
MMA. And there's the behind the scenes on the Blu-ray. They have a lot of really cool blueprints of the house that they show when they were designing it that are just really neat, and you can really visualize the layout of it.
That's cool.
And it's something that's so important because you kind of understand the layout early on, like there's the entryway, and there's the dining room, there's the kitchen, there's the nursery, there's the bathroom, and the way they're all kind of, it's not quite open floor plan, but they all kind of flow together. Yeah. And then you have like the column in the middle where the study is and the bedroom.
Yeah.
But then that flow is so important when you're going from one room to another, and it's like you're going from one era of history to the other, and one horrible genocidal event to the next.
Yeah. Well, and because we said it in like shock and awe when we were talking about the end of the movie, how all of this was happening in such a small house. They never try to make it look like a bigger house than it is. Like they're never trying to like trick or like do like a trick of the eye where it's like, whoa, she walked into the room, and it's like have you ever read like House of Leaves, how like you go into a room and you think it's gonna be one size, but it's actually massive? Like that's not what's happening in the movie. In the movie, all of these insane things are happening in this relatively normal size house. So it's
because very early on, when she's looking for him in the house, we get a shot of her walking into one room, and the camera starts to spin with her, and it's very fast, like it's very cyclical. Immediately you go the full circle of the house, and then she stops at the front door. And then you really do realize, like, I didn't notice it the first time I watched it, but the second time I did, I was like, wow, this is a really small space, and it's never ending.
Yeah. It's like both claustrophobic again, but also it has that flow to it. So it's like you never really feel stuck in a room. Like there's places to go, but it is like small and claustrophobic.
Yeah. And they must have had to shoot this movie very almost chronologically, because they fuck up that set, as they get into, because it starts off with a cute little farmhouse, and then they're literally building like slave cages and refugee camps in here.
Right.
Like just the production of it is astonishing to me that they were able to pull this off.
And there's it was made in 2017, so there's gonna be some slightly jarring CGI, but not a lot. It's really only when you see the outside of the house in the sunlight. They must have had to have CGI'd the rest of the house. And then like some stuff with Jennifer Lawrence being a roasty toasty marshmallow.
Yeah.
There really isn't.
And they show the makeup they do for her too, and in the behind the scenes, it's really gross. And I couldn't quite figure out how they did it too, because Javier Bardem actually sticks his hand. I don't know if she's like at an angle, and then there's like a fake body, and it's just her head sticking out, because he actually sticks his hand into like a cavity, which is really disgusting.
Lawrence let him do that.
I know. Well, I couldn't tell. I'm like, is that Jennifer Lawrence? Like, it looks. It's hard to even tell because you only see the eyes.
Yeah, but you can just tell. It's hard. Beautiful husky voice.
I guess that's true.
Amazing voice.
I'm glad to know that she can be absolutely charred, like the burntest hot dog at the bonfire, and she's still beautiful. Like
she's still tap that. She's hot, literally. But anyways, back to the house.
Yeah. Anyway, the fact too that the house is living, I think that's a really cool aspect too that we get to kind of see, in that when the house is like wounded, like from that guy being like murdered on their floor. I don't know. I haven't looked into that too much, but I thought that was like really interesting.
That was actually a part of the movie that I wanted to know your opinions on, is like the house literally having a heart. Like, is that like an extension of Jennifer Lawrence? Because at the end, is that sort of the glass crystal that gets pulled out of her? Like, I was very, I'm interested to know if you have opinions on that.
Yeah, for me, it's the closest we get to what Aronofsky says of it being a nature metaphor, the house being earth, and having a life force that's getting drained by the violence that's inflicted upon it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But yeah, it gets all muddled.
Yeah, how very Avatar of him.
It does. And like, God. But yeah, that's about as close to Mother Earth as I could kind of get, because like, that's like one of the few times I thought about Jennifer Lawrence like as Mother Earth, because if she's trying to take care of this house and keep it alive and keep it functioning, because if you notice, she's always cleaning up this house, she is always fixing up this house, she is picking up everything after everyone. And like that whole like thought about how nature always reclaims what's left behind. So it's like you see like abandoned cities, and nature always takes back over no matter what. It like leaves like a scar, but like it will always like come back. And the fact that she was there trying to consistently fix that house up and like clean it and try to put it back to rights, like that was about as close as I could get, until she was like overwhelmed to the point of like nature could not come back from this.
That's a really good point. I mean, I guess then you could almost look at it as maybe the house is earth, and then Jennifer Lawrence is more of this like nurturing nature force, like kind of separating
like
them
Mother Nature.
Yeah. But that's a really, I like your point about, her being like, I'm just picturing her as like, annoying moss that you're like trying to get rid of, and she's like, no, I have to get in here. Like,
yeah, literally. And again, this is stuff like I didn't see the first time, because I think I was trying so hard to figure out what in the fuck was happening. The first time I was watching this movie, and the second time I like sat there and was like, all right, I have my morning coffee, I am ready.
Yes.
Yeah, just
what a way to start your day.
I watched this at 8:00 in the morning. I just want you guys to know, because I had to go to work later. But it's like better than But yeah, so that was something that like really kind of hit me second time around, was how much she cleaned that house, because she cleans her house more than I clean my 2-bedroom apartment.
She also doesn't have a job, though, to be fair. That's the only thing she does.
Yeah, that is true.
But I find that really interesting. I've never, in my mind, earth and nature are the same. So I like that idea. Like there's earth, and then there's nature as like a caretaker of the earth, and almost being two different concepts. I've never thought of it that way before. That's fascinating.
Yeah, that's my literature major coming out. The Dayquil helps.
It does help. Yeah, usually I drink a little bit when we do these, but I didn't put any whiskey in my hot water. I'll do that after.
Do shots of Dayquil. You're gonna get some real good stuff.
I might, to get me through tomorrow. So what do we think? Is it Gothic? This is the point of the podcast where we decide it's Gothic. That's So Gothic. It's Gothish, or it's no Gothic. What do you guys think?
I think it's Gothic.
Yeah, I'm getting like Mother Nature-y pastel goth. Sorry.
I agree that I think it's Gothic.
I mean, the man being a brooding writer, like he might not be, friggin' what's his name from Jane Eyre?
Rochester.
Rochester. He might not be like Rochester, but he is this like kind of dickish, brooding man. You have this isolated house, creepy happenings. The only thing is like Jennifer Lawrence, well, I guess technically she gets like lured to the house because she loves this man. It's implied that it's his house. He's there fixing it up.
He kind of created her. It's hard to tell, like,
Yeah.
did he, he kind of creates her in a way. If we think about the beginning and the end where he has the
Right.
crystal and everything's reborn, she's part of it, and
Right.
so she's almost this creation that's made to love him.
Also, do you think it's weird that he clearly has a type? It's like blonde, curvaceous white women. Like,
Yeah.
suspicious.
Yeah. Why does he change them? Why isn't it her each
Yeah,
time?
why
That's
isn't
what
it-
I want to
I would-
know.
I would
Like,
just make
no
it
offense
all the
to
time.
whoever plays, no offense to whoever plays the woman
Yeah.
at the end, but like downgrade, like
Mhm.
Jennifer Lawrence?
like I think there's a theory that like, God, the creation cycle happened a few times before God like got it right.
I see.
And it's like when you're, I don't know whoever, I still don't know who the hell she is, but when this person is Jennifer Lawrence, you got it right.
You
Dude.
nailed
Like,
it.
you got it
Real.
right. This is the one you keep.
Yeah. Put
Legit.
the pen back in the drawer. You're done.
Yeah. Yes.
Meanwhile, he's like, nope, flood the world. We're done.
Yeah.
But flood it
Ugh,
with fire.
God.
Yeah.
Yeah.
He's
Literally.
awful.
God.
Mm-hmm.
God is the worst.
Boo.
So,
Boo.
yeah.
I
So
agree.
great. So yeah, it's Gothic. Anything else you guys wanted to add? This marathon session of Mother! Exclamation
God.
point.
I feel like we could keep talking, but we have to force ourselves to stop. Like, there's
Yeah.
so many things. We'll do like
Yeah.
a part 2 in a year from now or
Well,
something.
the Mother, the rebirth. Mother, the afterbirth.
The thing I like about this movie is that if they ever decide to do another one, it can be a prequel, a sequel, and a remake all in one.
All in
Oh my
one.
God, yes. I'm here for
I
it.
love it.
Yeah.
Well, thank
Let's
you
do-
for having me. That's what I'm happy
Curiosity.
about.
Yes, thank you for joining
Yes.
us, Caitlin. We are so excited
I
to
love
have
having
you
a
here.
guest. You were awesome.
Thanks.
Yes, we were great. See, we got it right. We got it right, even with our first try. Take that, God. We got it right on our first try.
Yeah,
Putting the
right.
pen back in the drawer.
What?
Done.
Yes, done. All right,
Yes.
this is the first, last, and only, and all episodes of That So Gothic. So thank you, we ghosties, for listening to us break down Mother! Exclamation point. Please subscribe wherever you get your podcasts. Rate and review us on Apple Podcasts. Drop us an email at sogothicpod@gmail.com with comments, suggestions for future films, and follow us on Instagram for hints about what we'll discuss next. Stay ghosty. Boo bye.
Bye.
Bye.